Good evening and welcome to the 99th Crowd Forum. Yes, we are one away from our century. Those who are cricketers here will know that is a very nervous place to be. So if I look around furtively tonight, I'm probably trying to steal a quick single to get there faster. But tonight we are looking at the problem of ocean plastics and the role that business can play in tackling it. And when we came up with this theme about 6 months ago, we thought it was what we call a bleeding edge topic. We were aware that Adidas had just made a trainer out of ocean plastics. We were aware of Interface's Networks program because we'd heard it on our stage. We knew about the Ecover ocean bottle. We knew of the Selfridges ocean plastic or plastic bottle campaign. But broadly speaking, business or mainstream business was not engaged yet with this issue. And a lot has changed over the last 6 months. Ocean plastic has burst into our Twitter feed, both in the scale of the problem, but also in the emerging solutions. So we saw at Davos this year, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation took ocean plastic into the conversation there with a terrific report on the new plastic economy. We've seen companies like Dell and Procter & Gamble come up with solutions that reuse ocean plastic. We've seen the brilliant Sky Ocean Rescue campaign, which you're going to hear about this evening. And just last week, we saw the Environmental Audit Committee launch an investigation into ocean plastics. The data has been shocking and visceral. We've learnt that 1 in 3 fish caught in British waters contains plastic. If you order 6 British oysters, the chances are it will be garnished with 50 pieces of plastic. We consume 35 million plastic bottles every day in the UK, and if trends continue by 2050, we will have more plastic in our ocean than fish. So our aim for this evening is to help this issue get onto all of our radars. As always, a big and deep thank you to all of our sponsors for hosting this conversation. If I'm allowed 3 specific thank yous tonight, they are to Sky, who joins us as our ocean sponsor for the 12 months ahead, to the deliciously sustainable Adnams, who become our drink sponsor, and you can taste their wares later, and to the ICAEW, who are hosting us here tonight and become the primary home of the crowd in 2017. Thanks also in advance to the ever cool, calm and collected Catherine Cameron, who will be moderating tonight's discussion. And before that, we hear from Dr. Heather Koldewey on the state of our oceans. So Heather has spent, I think, most of her life immersed in or submersed in ocean, and she is the head of marine and freshwater conservation at the Zoological Society for London, where she works with many companies and also with campaigns as well. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a warm welcome, please, to Heather?
Thank you. Well, this is my natural habitat, so I must admit that when I was invited here this evening as a fish biologist, it was beyond my dreams that I would end up talking to so many businesses in this building. This is much more my comfort zone, I have to say. We're in London, so we may feel very distant from the ocean. But what's really important to remember is how important the ocean is in governing everything that happens. Every other breath we take is thanks to the ocean. Our weather patterns, whatever we might say about them, are thanks to the ocean, driven mainly by it. And we live on a blue planet, which is vastly important from an economic point of view, from everything that governs our food sources and our climate patterns. But it's also changing dramatically and within a very short period of time. You'll have all probably talked to people who used to fish when they were young and just chatting about the one that got away or the extra large one. But certainly fish sizes, fish numbers, and due to the problems of increasing demand and heavy overfishing, we've seen huge collapses in our fisheries, and that's changed the landscape in the UK and globally, a largely island nation that we are and a fishing nation. And also the rise of pollution and of plastics in particular. So just since I've been alive is really the time where plastic has become mainstream, and particularly the use and misuse of plastic and the throwaway society that we see today. Now, I just want to be clear, I'm not here to despise all plastic. It's an absolutely phenomenal product, and without it, so many things wouldn't be possible today. Life-saving equipment, transport, everything that comes from a very lightweight, durable, long-lasting material that we value and can't imagine life without. It's certainly transformed our society. What my concern is the impact of the misuse and disrespectful use of plastic on the ocean in particular. And that's because, as a fish biologist, that's what I particularly focus on. And so we're looking at a really substantial amount of plastic going into the ocean. This really startling statistic of a rubbish truck of plastic being dumped into the ocean every minute. So in my short talk this evening, just visualize the amount of trucks that are reversing up to the ocean and dumping plastic in. And then as we understand some more insidious impacts of some other kinds of plastics, the microbeads that are used in certain cosmetic products that, although not so large in volume, are tiny in size. And what we see is a substantial impact on our ocean wildlife. So from direct entanglement of hundreds of thousands of animals a year to mistaken food items that lead to starvation and death, to more disturbing scientific reports in the last couple of years of the ingestion of these tiny bits of plastic by our plankton on the bottom left, the tiniest bits of life in our oceans, the ingestion into fish, and as Jim said, then our consumption and increasing consumption of plastic. What really struck me was being fortunate enough to be on a deserted desert island in the middle of the Indian Ocean just last year. It's uninhabited. It's the largest protected area in the world, or was until the end of last year. And in just 20 minutes on the one day I went onto a beach, I was on a scientific expedition there, I collected over 300 plastic bottles in just that short period of time that came from 10 countries from reading the labels. That really brought home to me that there really is no away. We talk about let's throw things away, and there is no away. Plastic lasts hundreds of years, if not thousands, breaks down into smaller and smaller particles. And so unless it's been burnt, all plastic ever made still exists on our planet. We know that nowhere exists in the world, everywhere that we've sampled as scientists around the world, we always find plastic in the ocean. And this is being treated very seriously at the highest levels of governance. So the United Nations has actually established a sustainable development goal for the ocean, which includes looking at reducing the marine pollution. And just last month, the United Nations Environment Programme boldly declared a war on plastic and particularly reached out to businesses, to companies, to actually be part of the solution, thinking about product redesign and minimizing plastic packaging, as well as how we influence consumers to change their throwaway habits. This is my community, my family, and my friends. My children are growing up beach cleaning. That's normal these days. I'd like to see us work together to see how we might change that for future generations and for future children. And I wanted to give some examples of projects that are solutions focused. We are dealing with a very big problem that does need solving, but I believe there's a huge potential to build off these examples I'm going to give you and develop a whole heap more solutions. And as Jim said, it's really exciting to see the momentum growing, but please don't underestimate the scale of the challenge that we face and how much has to be solved if we're going to make a difference. One of the problems, working as I have done it for over 20 years now in the Philippines, is the in-your-face challenge of discarded fishing nets, these last 600 years in the environment. And in these communities where I work, there is no wheelie bin or very friendly recycling truck that turns up and picks up waste every week. So it accumulates on these islands. And as a marine conservationist, it completely undermines our efforts to replant and protect mangroves or marine protected areas by passively fishing and catching all these fish that we've carefully gone about protecting. We were very fortunate to develop a partnership with Interface, who'll be very familiar with most of you in this room. Certainly wasn't to me as a fish biologist when we started the partnership, to see if we could work together to solve this problem. And I'll now show a short animation. The key points with the network's partnership has been that it wasn't set up as a philanthropic project. It was very much about doing business better, rethinking how we can do business in these communities. That involved setting up these community banks, which and setting up a business plan on how we were going to make this project work. We benefited from the business skills. One of the Interface engineers had the job of designing a net baling machine with zero electricity and very few materials. We designed a project that we can replicate and scale. We see lots of amazing initiatives happening at single points and single places, but these problems are so large we need to think about how we can really expand and scale. And as the animation showed, we've ended up benefiting the environment as well as income and well-being for those communities. And what's particularly important is we've driven behaviour change. So those nets no longer enter the ocean at all. They go straight into the supply chain where they are exported and ultimately made into carpets. So behaviour change becomes one of our biggest challenges when we look at marine litter, we look at disposable society and our fast-living, throwaway approach to life. And the second example I want to talk about is the single-use plastic water bottle. Now, your choice to buy or not to buy this bottle, and then what you do with it, whether you recycle it or you throw it on the ground or you throw it into a bin, will have a substantial impact on the ocean. So the choice is in your hand. And the figures are really quite startling. In summary, on average, every single one of us in this room uses 200 plastic bottles every year, single-use plastic water bottles. And although those may be used for a few minutes or a few days, they can take up to 1,000 years to break down. So we really see this as a symbol that connects us with the ocean. And starting with our Project Ocean partnership with Selfridges in 2015, and trying to sort of capitalize on the fantastic changes around the use of plastic bags, we came up with stopping permanently, or Selfridges did, selling all single-use plastic water bottles. They promoted reusable vessels and installed free drinking fountains and also exhibits to raise awareness and engage their customers. What was really important, although this was a very bold statement for the ocean, it also proved not to be as negatively commercially impactful as Selfridges were initially concerned, and that was by engaging the clever business and marketing people on the team to actually do things differently but better. But the question arose, how do we scale this up? We've done something fantastic in one large department store in London, but how can we take this to scale? And so a group of us working collaboratively, a bunch of different NGOs and other organisations, came together to see whether we could take this to a London-wide scale and developed the One Less campaign. We are in London on Sea. You may not have had your deck chairs out today, but London is a city founded on the ocean. And everything that we do connects us directly to the ocean. So we launched the campaign for a bunch of high-profile activities and then looked to gain partnerships and really understand what was going on. What was important is that I work for the Zoological Society of London. We run London and Whipsnade zoos. We have over 2 million visitors, and basically we're also a business as well as being a charity. And so part of what we had to do was to change our sales of single-use plastic water bottles and rethink on a very old site in Regent's Park exactly how we were going to keep our visitors happy and respect the ocean. Through changing last year, we basically have been measuring our impact as well. 160,000 less bottles just from one institution, and real engagement across staff right the way across the organisation, and a very positive response from our visitors. Again, through really strong engagement from our commercials team in our restaurants and retail, we found that we actually didn't make the commercial losses that we were very concerned about as a charity. So I'd like to invite you all here to become part of this One Less movement. We've been working to map the system with our Partners Forum for the Future. We've interviewed a lot of stakeholders across the supply chain to understand it better. And there's a very beautiful map at the back that maps out the system and looks at where we think we might be able to make change. But we definitely need your help. We don't need all the answers. This is a highly complex system. So I'd invite you to add your business card, stick it on any part of that systems map you think you might be able to help or are interested in being involved. So finally, everybody here tonight can make a difference. We've even made it easy for you by giving you a refillable water bottle, so there's no excuses. If everybody in this room, about 200 people, changed and never used a single-use plastic water bottle again, we would have made a big difference, 200 by 200. It's a lot as a group in this room. Or if you already use a refillable, influence a friend, a colleague, or somebody who doesn't. Explore how your organisation might become single-use plastic water bottle free. and become part of the oceans of solutions that we're looking for. Thank you.